Rob, one of the themes that comes through in Shraga's book is something that I think is familiar to a lot of people who look at globalization issues, which is that through history, it is generally better to be a person of average intellect and ability in a developed economy than someone of above average intellect and ability in a developing economy. And that if you are, sort of a average middle American, you're, for the most part, going to do a lot better over the course of your life than an above average entrepreneur in India or in Russia or any of the other developing economies. But that we have now created a modern world that's actually pretty bad for average people. That one of the things that you've now seen is that this opportunity that the modern world favors the thinkers and favors the innovators. I wonder if you could sort of speak a little bit about some of the divides and the inequalities that you see in this world.
Well, we need to recognize that innovation has always been with us. It's always been the single most important thing, factor to not be non-muted, that enables a society to grow richer. And this is kind of built into the laws of economics in a certain sense, or the way we understand economics. It is more important today, and it is more global today. So I'm actually going to take exception to the first statement, that it's not clear anymore that it's better to be an average person in a developed economy than an extraordinary person in a developing economy. And the reason one of the reasons that innovation seems to, the pace has accelerated, is that we hit a stage of innovation in which we focused on information technologies. And information technologies were an enormous general purpose innovation. They could be applied to virtually everything. There are very few of those. Electricity is a general purpose innovation, but most innovations, a jet engine, for example, or refrigeration, or these tend to be innovations that produce benefits in one area, but not across the board. And what was unique about, the other thing that's unique about information technologies is not only that it could be applied to virtually anything, but also that it worked with a good which has a marginal cost of zero. That is, in mass production, for example, another actual general purpose innovation, we figured out how to produce a lot more cars more quickly and more efficiently, and then we applied that to cereal and everything else. But you still, it still required enormous investment and kind of infrastructure, and so it was largely concentrated left to the advanced economies. Information technology, the brilliant guy in Mumbai and in Shanghai, or in Tripoli for that matter, is all he needs is access to a computer, which are now commodities, which can be produced very cheaply. And suddenly he's in a global network, and he can communicate in a global network. He can draw on the intellectual capital that's being built up in Israel and the United States and everywhere else. So I don't really agree anymore that I think the statement used to be true. But it's not clear that an extraordinary person in a it wouldn't be a lot better to be an extraordinary person in a developing society than an average person in an advanced one, because you now have entry into the advanced science and the advanced world. But very briefly, to get to your second point, it is the case that this period in which more and more of the value of everything that's produced in the economy is based on intangible things, and we can actually track that, we can measure it, we calculate it. I've got a project coming out very soon that estimates the current value of all the intellectual property in the U.S. economy. We can figure out how to measure that. It's been accompanied by greater inequality. So if you're an average person now in the United States, in the American economy, the skills which you've learned in public education through high school, the economy is devaluing those skills. It's saying they're not worth very much anymore in how we produce wealth in this society. And so we're going to pay you less. So those skills have been devalued, and the skills of the people in this room, the skills of those who can be creative or at least can operate effectively in an environment dense with the technologies that manage all these intangibles, all these ideas, their value's gone up. And so you see this increasing inequality. So I think you're right that it's probably no longer true on both sides of that comparison, both the extraordinary person in the developing country and the average person in the advanced one.
Shraga, one of the things that I thought was an interesting theme in the book was this question that you sort of struggle with about the role of government in fostering innovation and the role of government in helping turn public goods into private goods. And you sort of refer to it as social privatization in a couple of places in the book. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you see as the role that a government, whether it's the U.S. government, whether it's the Israeli government, whether it's Western Europe, or even a North African government sort of re-envisioning this modern world, should play in fostering innovation and intellect.
Finally, I mean, after the failure of 2008, it is clear that the system that prevailed until 2008, let's say the last 30 years, has failed. So the neoliberal system that only relied on the market, diminishing the role of the government, has failed. Take the social democratic states in Europe that relied on some kind of controlled state-controlled economies. They become bureaucratic, and they fail to. Have a look what happened to the socialist, so-called socialist governments in Eastern Europe, in Russia. They failed. I mean, they disappeared. So the old system of government involvement or government non-involvement in the running of the economies of the world have become a failure of the 20th century. So now we are living in the 21st century, and the question is, the new worlds, the new intellectual worlds, the new connectivity, the information, the IT revolution, the whole new story of the new economy, how can it be managed? In what way? To fight poverty, you have to democratize you have to be more equal. You have to create some kind of a new quality of equality. You have to create, it can't be the same equality that has prevailed in the jargon, in the language of the socialists of the 19th century. It can't be. It's another story. It's another economy. It can't be also, this kind of cutthroat competition between human beings that prevailed during this, after the Industrial Revolution. It doesn't work because, the ability to create volumes of riches that are limitless, that are infinite, is something that is new. Of course, innovations have been always, but the amount of innovations that is today is only 2 days ago you have passed here at the Senate the patent law of the new patent law of the United States, and the whole intellectual world was accepting that something new will come up. And it's new because it's a new law, but it's old in its content. It's and it doesn't solve the basic problem. But it was announced that about 1.5 million applications for patents at the Patent Office of the United States have been waiting, queuing, to be recorded and so on. So we are living in a world where you want to understand what is the new function of a government in this new world. And first of all, my answer is that you have to consider today that this new property is created mainly by the government. It's man-made new property. The private property of today is man-made. It's not anymore the tradition. And let's assume for a while that what I'm saying is correct, or almost correct. That's enough for me. So I don't want to be correct. I want to be truthful. To be correct is something that I don't like. In any way, what I'm saying, in this world, the government is a wealth-creating machine. Every day it's creating, and always the question is for whom. When it creates a patent law and leaving the pharmaceutical firms with, expending about 30% of its earnings, to fight other patents, something is wrong with it. Or if you are controlling the whole the regulatory power of your state, you are creating assets. The government is creating assets by its regulatory power through, for example, the whole story of Homestead. You don't know because you are here from Washington, and yesterday I appeared at the Petroleum Club in Texas, and some of the richest guys of Dallas have been applauding me when I told them social privatization has been invented by Jefferson or his followers by the Homestead Acts of the United States. Mm-hmm. Because all these neighborhoods of Dallas and of Austin, of Houston, and all these great stories of riches of Texas, 24 million people, don't forget it. So it's coming from this social privatization stuff. So what I'm saying, I'm giving full meaning and power and function to the state, to transform the economy in such a manner that through its regulatory power, it will create, through affirmative action, more and more assets to reduce poverty or to democratize assets, wealth. Through such a process, you are not touching the existing private property system. I am against touching this system. Let them disappear by history. They are already diminishing, They've been 100% about 30 years ago, and they're about 30% today. About 70% of the wealth of America is new wealth that has been created the last 30 years. Let's assume it's correct. Mm-hmm. Okay? So in such a case, this new wealth is created by the state. So whenever you have property, whenever you are capable to create patents, for example, take a patent on if you are granting it to whatever pharmaceutical firm for 20 years. In your constitution, it had to be only 14 years, but you are granting it for 20 years. So the 6 years can be divided in a manner that you should push a part of it into the coffers of the people in this system or another system, because it's man-made. So you can distribute the new wealth, not redistribute the existing wealth through regulation and through or granting, for example, granting building rights to slummy neighborhoods of America. You know how much apartments there are living people in the United States in slummy areas? A lot. I don't want to mention the number because I'm in love with America, so I don't want to defame it.
Well, you mentioned Jefferson in your answer there. A lot of people probably don't know that Thomas Jefferson was of course, the first U.S. patent commissioner. And he dove into a little bit this
And therefore he said freedom of ideas. Yes, of course.
And that he dove into sort of some of this discussion about how one goes about taking ownership of an idea, and wanted to get you talking a little bit about the big idea that you raised in the book of the idea bank, but wanted to give you, as a background here, a little bit of Thomas Jefferson's thoughts.
That is quoted and misquoted already about 150 years. Because the truth of the matter that he was basically speaking about ideological ideas, about spiritual ideas, about political ideas, about everything that was not, they have not been wealth-bearing ideas. Because when he came to that, he was speaking about wealth, the equity, the sweat equity. That was his great story, sweat equity. And what I'm speaking is about mind equity. Mm-hmm. That is, I'm following exactly the spirit of Jefferson in America, mind equity, because the new wealth is coming from the new minds are in your mind. And that is very moral, as he said, because you are becoming the owner of your piece of land because you have invested your sweat equity. Mm-hmm. It has been forgotten in New York.
Yeah. So he wrote in 1813, if nature has made any one thing less susceptible than all others of exclusive property, it is the action of the thinking power called an idea, which an individual may exclusively possess as long as he keeps it to himself. But the moment it is divulged, it forces itself into the possession of everyone, and the receiver cannot dispossess himself of it. Its peculiar character, too, is that no one possesses the less, because every other possesses the whole of it. So with that as sort of a backdrop, I wanted to get you to introduce this idea that you have, that you present in your book, of the ideas bank and allowing people to register their ideas for better and for worse.
What I'm saying, that was absolutely correct at the beginning of the 19th century. But today, when more and more ideas are becoming the source of wealth, you have to democratize that in a manner that it shall belong to the creators. And what's more moral than the creators of the new wealth will become the owners of the new wealth. And they can't do it because finally, if the idea is out, then it can be taken up by others. If I want to register it, I don't have the money to do it, or I have to keep it for about 3-4 years at the patent office, and I will not be able to do it. So the whole story, the patent system has been created by Madame Anne, by Queen Anne in 1700 or so. So the whole story of not granting assets rights, not define ideas as assets, and not to grant them the institutions of private property is against the basic principles of capitalism in the United States. You are all the time praying and preaching the idea of private property as the basis of the free market. But when it comes to the most important element that's creating the wealth of the people today, it's the last 20, 30 years through this information revolution. Where are you? Where is you've forgotten your principles. Therefore, in the patents law all over the world, almost all over the world, there are two elements that are very, very that are wild from the point of view of morality and this principle of private property. One, that ideas are not eligible to be patented. It's only their expression can be patented. And second, that if you are working for an employer and you are discovering, you're inventing anything, it belongs to the employer normally through a contract, but also by some kind of legal arrangements. These two elements are creating a situation that the majority of the people of America that are so intelligent and so many intellectuals are moving around, or they're keeping their ideas, which is against the benefit of society, or if they're throwing it out, they're not rewarded. So what I'm saying, in today's world, to see the development of idea from its inception to its final getting expression in a form is a time span, you know, a year, 2, 3 years, because it starts with the idea, it continues with some kind of information base, it continues with some kind of a theory, of a concept, and then a little bit more until it's finally, you know, growing into a child that is born and happy and joyful with red cheeks. So, but you have to divide it.
Yeah.
And why not to take this, the first 3 stages when it's already a concept? I'm not talking about to register it. So it shall be open to the public, and you will be able to enjoy it and to develop it. But at the same time, if something shall finally come out, you should become the owner of 10% or 20% of the wealth that will be created by us through this idea.
Now that would be a real patent debate.
Of course, it's a problem because the old riches are against it. Who is?
Absolutely.
But are you? What's your opinion about it? What would you say?
I'd have to think about it. You know,
it's a evasive answer.
Yeah, it's well.
Well, I'm talking. Yeah, I'm talking with you as a Democrat.
Look, certainly patent rights are understood economically as fundamental to getting people to invest the time and money required to come up with something new. You know, you've got a basic economic problem here, and that is you have individuals or companies who have all these resources, human capital resources and physical and financial capital resources that they could use in ways that they know will generate these good returns. And so you've got to persuade them to say, okay, we're not going to use it for the uses that you know will produce a return. Instead, we're going to put it in this very risky venture that may yield nothing. And that the only way that you can get people to do that, this way of thinking about it, is to give them a monopoly right. It's the only monopoly in the economy, right? Everything's supposed to be free market except for patents, right? And we create these bubbles of monopoly in order to create the incentive to get people to say, hey, I'm not going to use these smart people and all this capital in ways that I know are going to yield me 12% or 9%. Instead, I'm going to risk it on this other thing, and maybe it'll produce, you know, 140% or 1,000% or whatever, you know. How do you get to have 40% returns like Microsoft has, you know? President asked me this once, not her president, and I said, that's what's called a monopoly rate of return. It's a monopoly rent, and that's the way we set up the system. So you're saying we need to really revise this, and it's
to democratize it.
So to democratize it. The question is, you know, the argument here is, are you going to kill the golden goose, right, or the goose that lays a golden egg? That is how much.
Yeah, I mean the golden eggs for whom? That is this question.
Well, the golden egg for whomever. Look, Microsoft makes enormous profits, but the economic and social benefits to the society of what they invented are so much greater than the profits Microsoft gets. So the reason you care about this is not that it makes Bill Gates rich, but because we're all so much more productive using the things which he bought from others.
Have a look into the Bayh-Dole Act 1980 that has transferred all the patents from the state of America to the universities. And that is some kind of a social privatization that
right.
I'm advocating.
Look, I'm not saying that. All I was saying was I wasn't really sure because to me it's a really complicated question. But I think you really raised the thing which really kind of made me sit up and say, hey, this is really interesting, was the suggestion that these kinds of changes which you've described require a very different kind of politics. And I can really see, we can all see that. We just had this big patent debate. And this debate has been going on, this fight's been going on for 4 years around this particular bill. And the bill is about making technical changes that either advantage or not one of the two groups which are involved in this, which is the pharma people who want as strict patent protections as possible versus the IT people who are always getting sued, so they would like looser patent protections, frankly. And their products turn over so quickly that patents are much less important to them, because whatever they do is obsolete in 2 years anyway. And this has been a special interest fight. And what you have pointed out is that the way we do politics doesn't manage these issues very well. And these issues are at the center of what's happening socially in terms of equality and what's happening economically. And that, you know, it's not a matter of getting the right policy. You're saying that the actual politics of it are not up to the task. And I think you're right. I think you're
Thank you.
How much of the value of a good, an intellectual good in the modern economy is in the generation of the idea versus the execution of the product? So how does one balance where you, I'll use an older example actually, which is Thomas Edison. There were about 5 different teams around the world who were working on at the same time the idea that running electricity through thin enough filaments would generate light. And Edison got there first. Should he share in some way the benefit of executing that idea best first with the other people who were working on it, who might have come to the idea and the innovation before he did?
You see, the principle that the winner gets it all is a very, very egomaniac principle. It creates a rivalry between people that are not rivals, that can cooperate. Why should it not be arranged in a proper manner that at the beginning you should see what's your part in the story? So it creates a lot of court cases, and the legal profession is benefiting out of it enormously. The amounts that are involved are unimaginable. And what I'm trying to solve is a problem that somehow the patents law that are prevailing today in the world are not taking care. You can take care of it in that manner or another manner, but you can value it, especially today. That is my basic point. There are ideas that today are already, the ideas themselves are the property. Take an algorithm, what is it? Take a painting, what is it? If it's put on take everything which is absolutely abstract. You know, the old technologies have been based on the idea that the expression of idea is basically because the idea has become not tangible. It has become the tangibility, has created the property, because everything that wasn't tangible has not created the feeling that that can be a property. Because ideas are, the ether, the sky, the cosmos, ideas are flowing around. They are not, they are something that you can't touch, you can't move, you can't encumber, you can't do with it anything which is physics. But, this God-created world of today, that by word, by without anything which is material, you're creating something, the abstract itself, because the great example is always, that the wine is the idea. It can't be patented, but the battle can be patented. That is it. Take everything which is connected with basic algorithms that are moving the Google story. The fact that you are capable to create so much wealth and so much movement and so much so much happiness and so much joy and so much satisfaction to so many people by by intellectual property, by algorithms. You know, have a look on Google that is capable to create a library of 130 million books that should be open to the public at large all the world. It's the new Alexandria, you know, the great story of a library. How can, if it's correct for Google, why America can't do it? That is the idea of poly lie. Well, I mean, well, why not? I mean, why not? I mean, but you can do it, but you're used only to move through private initiative. That's great, but regulate it in such a manner that you will create a public market for private goods. Instead of fighting, you know, making all the time the newspapers smaller and firing so many wonderful journalists and make it all smaller and going half to be on the web and so on and so forth. I mean, the whole story of fighting these new technologies, these new wells, it's Luddite. It's a Luddistic element.
Let me ask you a question. In thinking of the Google algorithm, you know, Google has this algorithm which can look at your searches and figure out what ads should be on the side that you are most likely to click on, and that's the basis.
It's a byproduct, but the basic product, it's capable to show in a split of a second everything in the worldwide in 1 minute. It's a dreamland.
Okay.
I mean, that is something that nobody 30 years ago, it would be something that you would say it's a...
But the question is, do you get the patent because you have the idea that there should be a system that does this, or do you get the patent for actually developing the algorithm or developing the system that
But
does
the
that?
patent is not the only one way of register wells. There is a patent which is the final product. Okay, keep it as a patent. But there is a stage where you have a concept. Why not to register a concept or a theory or a formed idea that you can classify it as something that shall create the wealth, that is wealth-bearing idea that has the potential to become wealth in 2-3 years. Then you are getting your share. And it can be defined because we know exactly, not exactly, but we know approximately, and we are working on in this kind of political economy that has to define property rights. We can work on proximities, because to fight it you're losing much more benefit for the society and benefit for that's the idea. I mean, that is the structural reforms of the property rights of today's world, and you can you can make it more equal. It doesn't have to finally. I'm not fighting against Microsoft because Microsoft is the best example of moral property. He has done it without, without exploiting people, without having armies, without sending police to the mines in the 19th century, and so on and so forth. It's moral. Google is moral. Microsoft is moral. The Facebook is moral. It's great properties, but it's moral. You can't fight them. But try to make it, to spread it to more and more people in the world. Not only the findings of it, but the ability to create, the opportunity to create the new wealth. That is the story. The idea that I'm trying to advocate is the idea to enable more and more people to participate in the world of creative, of the new creative class, in the world of inventions and so on, and to get the benefit of this new world. And because they don't have the monies, they have the ability to do it on a computer in Cairo or in Jerusalem or in Washington. The same guys are working on the same. Everything is known. Let's assume so, known to everybody. So the ability to invent, not only to invent, but also to be remunerated, to be rewarded for the invention, and to share the wealth, the new wealth of the nations, is something that can be done only if you should grant. If you should transform ideas into property rights that shall enable you to get a share of the final product, if it should come through. That is the whole idea. A little bit more of new kind of equality. It's something, you know, everybody is equal. But if equality is applied to non-equal, it's a kind of a discrimination. What I'm saying, let's be a little bit more equal. Let's let people enjoy the world of opportunities, real opportunities, with a little bit of economic background that shall enable them to have this leisure time, free time to think, to develop, to research, and not only to be buzzard of the daily bread. That is the story. More education, more homesteading of the American, or more homesteading for more people in America. Mm-hmm. And the new homesteading is intellectual property homesteading.
40 ideas in a mule.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.